There we were, just like it was supposed to be. The start of spring, you pretty thing, you were the girl for me. It started easy, we just took it nice and slow. You know, big plans, just holding hands to let our feelings grow.
When we talk about like terroir and like having a sense of place,
well, that's a little different. That's a legitimate concept.
and do you think that like for instance, I know that when I drink a wine from the Rhone, I tend to taste the same, like violets, rocks, blueberry, and I can usually pick it out. Like that's maybe one of the only ones I can pick out in a blind tasting, right? Like solidly. And then I mean, and so to me that has a sense of place. But when other varietals, that, you know, Pinot Noir, I recognize it's Pinot Noir, but I might not know where it's from. New World or Old World, I find the two are kind of blending together.
Yeah.
You know, what's your take on that? Like sense of place. Like, do you think Niagara has something you could drink a wine and distinguishedly recognize a Niagara wine?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So I was in Prince Edward County, and I was at Clawson Chase, and I found out that they use some Niagara grapes, you know, at Clawson Chase, but I wasn't really thinking about that. And I was tasting one of their wines, and it had a very distinct limestone minerality that we've come to recognize, like from the bench here. Not here because we're on the bench, but the bench in Niagara. And I said, this must be Niagara grapes. And indeed they were. They're from Beamsville. So yeah, I mean, there's certain markers you can get that are absolutely legit, you know?
Yeah.
But it's a lot more than just dirt. Like terroir has a lot to do with, like, strictly speaking, climate and so forth. But this is where I'm going to do my soapbox. I don't know if Jeff's going to agree with me here, but I like to say that a bit of terroir, or what people call terroir, is actually people, as the human aspect of, based on what I've seen as someone who's very new to winemaking, local winemaking culture, and sort of there's like a professional culture that develops of what's normal to do in an area. So there's like an international sort of concept of what New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is like, because they all use the same yeast and they all do very minimal sort of interventions on it, and then they sell it around the world. And so that's kind of like a local winemaking culture that's become terroir.
Right. So that makes some sense. So it's more it's wine style and technique rather than what the land's giving you for the New World.
I wouldn't go so far as I say that's part of it.
Part of it, yeah.
It's much more complicated than just there's this patch of dirt and it tastes like this.
But that's probably another wine that if I had to recognize, I could probably recognize a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, just because I find them really zesty.
Sure. But as usual, I'll just say I am young in the world of winemaking and I have a lot to learn. But that's just my observations.
Yeah.
Of someone who's budding as a winemaker, not as a yeast seller.
What's your take on sense of place, or do we have it, or?
Well, absolutely. I think you know, if I want to look at, we'll use Riesling as an example. Riesling in the you know, the Beamsville Bench area or in the west side of St. Catharines has a real distinctness to it, and it's generally speaking very minerally, very limestone, very limey, and citrusy. And the wines over on the Niagara Lake side are grown on sandier soils. They tend to have a lot more orchard flavored or orchard fruit flavors, peaches, apricots, that sort of thing. And there's a real distinction between, you can distinguish between a Beamsville Bench Riesling and a Niagara Lake Riesling. And I think a lot of that goes with other whites like Chardonnay as well. Where it becomes muddled is wines that are produced from grapes from different sub-appellations mixed together. So, for instance, if I were to, I mean, we only make wine from grapes that we grow here. So, you know, we could say that our wines are typical of here. But if I started to buy in grapes from the lakeshore, and then buy also grapes from St. David's and grapes from the Beamsville Bench area, or maybe eat down in Peely Island or something, and started mixing those in with my grapes here, the terroir issue becomes muddled. So as much as I agree with what Andrew is saying about it, you know, being partially about the soil and partially about the winemaker's hand, a lot of terroir is not really, you can't really say exactly where it comes from. You can't really, you know, when you're tasting a Cabernet Sauvignon, you can't really say exactly where that aroma that's typical Cabernet Sauvignon comes from. It comes from there because it's a combination of chemical elements that come together in this particular organism and taste that particular way, just like a salmon tastes like a salmon. You know, so that's you know, my take on terroir is it's a blend. It's a combination of where the grapes are grown, the conditions of the growth season that year, and the winemaker's hand, and also the building that it's built in. You know, there's certain terroir, there's certain things that a building adds to a wine, and I can't tell you why it tastes that way, but I can tell you that it does. It just does, and I can't explain why it is, and that's maybe what you're getting at with you know, with your analogy of the Rhone Valley is, you know, the wines you've tasted come from the same places. You know, they're coming from the wineries that we get over here, and if you were to taste some of the wines from the Côte du Rhône in Rhone and tasted you know, a smaller chateau that we wouldn't get over here, you would probably taste a wine that's completely different than what you're used to over here. So you know, I think there's a lot of it that's we can specifically say yes, it has to do with soil, has to do with climate, has to do with the hand of the winemaker, but I think a lot of it has to do with the place that it's made in and the conditions of the vintage, and you know, many different things. I mean, the yeast selections, the barrel selections. You can change things up every single year and have a different wine come from the same place and taste completely different every year. You can do the same thing to the same wine every single year and it still tastes different.
There we were, just like it was supposed to be. The start of spring, you pretty thing, you were the girl for me. It started easy, we just took it nice and slow. You know, big plans, just holding hands to let our feelings grow. And you were so beautiful. Yeah, you were so beautiful.